Hi everyone, Mark Merrill with Firm. Democrats have no policy standards. None at all. The Maine Policy Institute cracks our schedule, among many other topics today, folks, on this program about Democrats and their narratives and their ideologies and their feelings being hurt more than anything else. It seems Democrats add a tax hike here in Maine to the supplemental budget. Isn't that nice? Another $2 million in your face. Not to mention mine as well. So among the other several topics on our program, folks, citizens of Maine, all of you out there, and biological boys and girls, men and women, just want to make sure. First, it seems that Janet Mills, Secretary of State, Shenna Bellows, changing the language of a proposed bill to become law in her twisted, warped mind. Just can't get enough of just socking it to the Maine citizens, even the younger ones that are coming up. So here's a breakdown here, folks. As briefly as we can make it. It's a little over 4 minutes, but the Maine Wire's Steve Robinson, busy as he is, was talking to recently Maine Girl Dads organization leader Leyland Streif about the question, which is totally, as you will hear, confusing to voters. Wait till you hear it.
Do you want to change civil rights and education laws to require public schools to restrict access to bathrooms and sports based on the gender on the child's original birth certificate and allow students to sue the schools? So, Leyland, your reaction when you first saw...
Maybe I'll leave and come right back. I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, he's not hearing anything. You know what I think it is? He's on Safari. Safari doesn't work for some of this.
Wait, now I hear you.
So, I'll throw that question to you, Seamus, while I text with Leyland.
When I first heard it, I actually thought, wow, you know, Bellows is losing her touch. I think this is going to do less, even if this wording goes through, I think it's going to do less to hurt the ballot question than her previous efforts with other questions. But I did think that my first thought was that the line about allow students to sue the schools, that struck me as a particularly vague attempt to try to make it sound scary. That seemed like her biggest shot.
Okay, Leyland, do you have us now?
Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, yep, we got you now. So what did you think when you first saw the wording of that question? And what is the ballot question committee doing to, fight back against this? Because there is a kind of a esoteric legal process where you can challenge.
Do you guys not hear me?
We hear you. We can hear you.
All right, okay, great. Hey, sorry, so I don't know if there was a question to me. There's maybe some sort of audio issue. Maybe it's on my side. I'm not totally sure. I thought somewhat similar when I saw the question. The questions are great, but the question could have been a lot worse. I think that, the sort of core intent of the question, there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's language that I don't like the restriction of bathroom usage as opposed to the designation of usage of private spaces based off of sex. There's obviously a couple of things in there that we find, most sort of at fault and most egregious, which...
I want to point this one out before he talks about it, folks, Mr. Streif. There's a big difference between gender and sex. And he's going to point it out here. Pay attention to this one. This is about all of our children's and grandchildren's and possibly great-grandchildren's lives at stake, folks. The LGBTQ and whatever other damn alphabets they want to put on the extension we just heard about on the national news recently within the last 24 to 48 hours before this podcast. Stuff it. Yes. And we're talking to GLAAD, GLAAD, and all the LGBTQ, so on and so on and so on, pests, I'm going to call you, and being nice about it. or you'll find yourself in more lawsuits than you can have letters for. Here is the rest of what a gentleman, Leland Streif, head of the organization Maine Girl Dads, describes succinctly, directly, and what needs to be said.
A couple of things that are just essentially in direct contradiction to what the proposed legislation says. And I think there's probably two most egregious things that are in there that we do think really need to change, and we hope that people public comment on that and encourage the Secretary of State to make that change. Two of those things are, number one, it talks about gender on your birth certificate. That's not what the bill says. The bill defines very specifically sex. It doesn't even mention the word gender. It only defines sex and uses sex as the designation for private spaces in competitive sports. And as we all know, and not only we, literally every major medical body on the planet Earth knows and has stated, including the American Medical Association and the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, sex and gender are not the same thing. They're definitionally different things. Gender is a social construct, a role you play in the world, an identity of yourself, and sex is an innate and mutable biological marker. We are talking about sex, we are not talking about gender identity. The second thing is the interesting way that the question was started, which is, do you want to change civil rights and education laws? What's interesting about that is the Secretary of State's own summary, where she took our bill, and our bill does state that we are creating a law that is not discriminatory as it relates to the Maine Human Rights Act. She not only included that in her summary, she took it a step further to say, and I'll quote it on my side, not only did she say our language, that this does not constitute discrimination based off of the Maine Human Rights Act, she then says, quote, and that the Maine Human Rights Act may not be construed to conflict with the provisions of the initiated bill. So even the Secretary of State's own language says that this bill does not conflict with the Maine Human Rights Act, so there is no change in civil rights. There are changes that are going to happen in education policies. So there's a couple of other sort of nits within there, but I'd say that those are probably the two biggest things that really do require immediate change.
How's that, folks? Pretty clear, is it? Sure does sound that way to me. Next, we hear from the editor of the Maine Wire again, Steve Robinson, on a different topic altogether. Going to change things up a little bit here on our signs that we always show you here, to make sure that you stay on top of just about everything that we're doing here at FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media. So here we go. Next, seems Janet's not playing nice anymore, or she's tending to be a little bit skittish. You say skittish? What in the world would you mean by that, Mr. Merrill? Well, you see, Janet seems to have some second thoughts about continuing on her campaign to unseat Susan Collins. First, she's got a big hurdle. Of course, with, you see, Mr. Plattner. Seems that she, according to Maine Policy Institute, not just the Maine Wire, Maine Policy Institute, I want to give a brief bio on here, folks. They've been around longer than some of the legacy news organizations in the state have been alive. 20 plus years and counting, going back to the early parts of the 21st century. That's how long the Maine Policy Institute's been around. And they have quite a staff, and they have a research staff as well. They, along with some of the other members of the Maine Wire, 2 or 3 of them are members of the Maine Policy Institute, by the way, folks. Is Janet Mills going to drop out? Water getting a little too hot, is it, Janet? You getting a little hot under the collar, are you? Well, besides the fact is Janet Mills considering dropping out of the U.S. Senate primary race, here's a description with Mr. Robinson again, along with the Maine Policy Institute staff members as well, which I think you'll find quite interesting about some issues that Janet Mills is going to have to deal with before she leaves office and may be on the hook for after she leaves office. Here's that discussion.
By asking about Janet Mills, and I want to start by asking about her doing the job of governor, because this is the end of session. There's been a lot of fast and furious action this week with the supplemental budget, which now has been passed, and as of 30 minutes ago or so, she signed it, right?
Yep,
So
just signed it.
Just signed it, so hooray! But the real conversation I want to have is about sort of her political future in the U.S. Senate race, but they're connected. They're connected, believe it or not. And this is where we begin, because the millionaire's tax is in there, the 3%, or excuse me, the 3% surcharge, that's an old idea. The $300, the $300 checks are in there as well. And it seems like there may have been some kind of a deal cut to get these both over the finish line. In other words, a little, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah, the this for that, if you will, between Mills and the Democrats. Democrats in the legislature wanted the millionaire's tax. She, of course, famously did not want the millionaire's tax as of 3.5 minutes ago. But she wanted the checks. And so I'll support the millionaire's tax, you support our checks, we both get what we want, call it a day. That's apparently what happened.
You know what I'm actually sort of confused about in a way is her being so insistent upon getting the $300 checks included in the budget, but then also with the concurrent news basically about her not having any ads booked.
Oh, I'm getting to that. Don't worry, that's on the list.
That's on the list.
That's on the list.
Yeah,
but it is connected, because what I'm confused by is that the story you're referencing, the fact that she's quiet on the air, and I want to get into that more substantially in a minute, but that story has led some to suggest that she's quitting, that she's dropping out of the race, that it's over.
That's why, lends to that notion.
But a powerful argument against that would be the fact that she just did this.
Yes.
Because if she really was going to walk away, even if it was going to be sometime a week or two in the future, then you would think that she wouldn't be really all that uppity about the $300 checks, and she really wouldn't care all that much, certainly, about the millionaire's tax. She wouldn't have done these things.
Right.
If she was really just going to say, all right, forget it.
She's just going to pull the plug, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So, since she is doing them, their campaign has said, oh, no, we're full steam ahead. We're still in this. Maybe they actually are. I don't know. But those two things together were so obviously a political calculus, you just can't shake it. You can't get away from it.
No, I think it absolutely was the case, and, shocking, backdoor dealings in politics, but...
Why that never happens,
no, never. And it was so obvious, watching the process play out, where, the Republicans proposed, I think it was over 20 amendments to this thing, trying to just get something done, something changed. And at one point they were like, well, hear me out, let's cut the $300 checks to $200, and then all the other money can go to, agriculture and forestry and these things that Democrats have been saying were underfunded. And you think that'd be a pretty popular proposition, and got zero traction, which I really think goes to show that they were hard set. No, and it's not just that we have to send out checks; we have to send out $300.
It had to be $300.
Right, that was the agreed upon amount. We're late night in the session, we can't. Will Janet agree to 200 and still give us our passing? I really think that when you watch it, it becomes clear that they realized they had no choice but those $300 checks, and the other stuff was kind of ancillary to that.
Yeah, kind of was there. So it is all politics in the end. My question for you guys now, as we ponder it, now that it's passed and signed, is will this harm them? And I mean that in a very, very big sense. Mills, the legislative Democrats, other people running for things under the Democratic banner this year. Angus King, John Featherston had an opportunity to try to get a comment out of him about the millionaire's tax when he was at, I think, that BIW.
Yeah, it was the BIW event, yeah.
So he was down there, and he caught him. He's like, hey, bro, dude, yo, you used to be a governor. what do you think of this man? And he just feigned total ignorance. He's like, I got enough stuff to worry about. I can't,
Too much stuff to worry about in D.C.
Yeah, in D.C., everybody loves to hear that. Thanks, Angus.
Right.
He clearly, he obviously knows.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he obviously knows, right? So he obviously didn't want to answer the question, and that just indicated to me, I'm like, ooh, sore spot. Sore spot. Oh, Democrats are raising taxes in Augusta in an election year.
So you don't want to comment on this thing in your own state, dude, that you represent?
If it was such a popular thing, you'd think he would have been like, well, I think it's a great idea, or, I understand why they did it, or whatever, but he's like, no, run away.
It really is crazy that a sitting senator can say, oh, I'm too involved with D.C. to know what's happening in my own state.
That wasn't a good statement.
That's
not good optics,
You're
dude.
supposed to be representing your state
Right.
in D.C. You would think to do that, you would have to have knowledge of your state, a pulse on what was happening, a finger on the pulse of what was happening, and that's so, I cannot fathom hearing that and being like, that guy, that's who I want to represent me. It's mind-blowing that somebody can say that and legitimately think that's a good defense.
Good defense for what? Irreprehensible political garbage. Way to go, Angus. Another one we can't depend on, folks. Seems it's Susan Collins and nobody else. We go into the others, but we haven't got time for it. Actually, they don't even deserve the time. So, as we move on to the last segment of our program today, folks, I think you've pretty much figured it out by now, but there's just a little bit more details of some additional news that's going on in the world today. Get it to come up here for you. There we are. Our friends at Newsmax be telling us a little bit more about things going on in the world as we try to make it as straight as possible there for you. I think we could straighten it out. There. Much better. Apologize for that a little bit. But with Democrats having no policy standards, folks, we've got a roundup of those latest events. First of all, with the U.S.-Iran negotiations, things seem to have calmed down over there in the Gulf of Iran and near the Red Sea and Saudi Arabia and the Strait of Hormuz and all that other negotiation of getting barges through there and oil barges through there. So here's that latest. Coming right off the bat, folks. We'll get to some more information in the next episode, though, folks, when it comes to Democrats and what kind of no policy predictions and prognostications they got up their sleeve. It don't mean anything. Well, in these last headlines here, folks, a little bit interesting we found, and we thought we'd put them in on this particular program. It seems that President Trump is sending empty oil tankers. That's right, like it says here in the headline of Newsmax. Empty oil tankers headed to the United States to get oil and gas. This dated April the 11th, 9 o'clock in the morning. The president said on that day that large numbers of completely empty oil tankers were heading to the United States to load up with oil and gas. He said in a Truth Social post, quote, massive numbers of completely empty oil tankers, some of the largest anywhere in the world, are heading right now to the United States to load up with the best and sweetest oil and gas anywhere in the world. We have more oil, he says, than the next two largest economies that produce oil combined in higher quality. Now, his post came as a senior U.S. and Iranian officials were meeting on Saturday in Islamabad with Pakistani intermediaries as Tehran laid down its red lines against Washington, meaning D.C., and said Washington must accept face-to-face talks could take place to end their 6-week-old war. Trump said earlier this week that Iran should not change or charge fees. You may have heard earlier. He said earlier this week Iran should not charge fees to tankers going through the blockaded Strait of Hormuz, which has caused the worst disruption to global energy supplies in history. Just a couple of more items here, folks. The Iran war squeezes the oil supply and pushes prices a bit higher. Inflation may jump by most in nearly 4 years as gas prices spike in the wake of this war, conflict, whatever you want to call it. And Trump's vision for prosperity may benefit retirees the most when this is all said and done. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, here we are, as always. Firm, fairness in reporting media, and our car that's always on the lookout and is always around central Maine to make sure that you know that we have your freedoms and your rights in focus by truth, facts, reality, and common sense. You see any issues that might pop up in your life or any things at your local town offices, council meetings, board meetings, school board exactly as well, and others, let us know. Gmail us anytime. fairnessandreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessandreportingmedia@gmail.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, folks. As always, stay focused and pray for our country, our state especially, our governor candidates, our state Senate and state House representative candidates vying to turn this state around. See if we can't get Janet Mills out a little earlier. Meantime, stay safe, everyone, and peace